And we're live. Okay, so I'm just going to share this in a couple of groups before I get going. So just one moment. We're going to be talking about anxiety. Right, so I'm just going to share in my in Feel Better, Heal Better in my group. One moment. Hi, if you've already joined us, just sharing in a couple of places, and then I will be going live, as they say. So about a minute or so. Okay, that's going in there. That's in there, and then share on my personal page. Okay, one moment. Can't think of a easier way to do this, so here it goes. Okay. And right, yes, let's begin. So welcome to this is the second of my mental health broadcasts in a series of three. Last week we covered depression from the META-Health perspective and looked at various different ways that depression can occur, different types of depression, and how domestication, so the way that we live now, not really in line with nature in many ways, is causing us to experience more of that. Today we are going to explore anxiety, which is now the most commonly diagnosed mental health condition, or as we know them in META-Health, behavior patterns. So if you're joining at any time, I'd love you to just say hi, send some hearts or some laughs or angry react or however you feel up on the screen, and just a comment, just anything, just let us know that you're here. That would be great. And I'm going to start by, I just want to say that this is obviously a live broadcast. So I am hoping that I'll get all of the information out there that I want to, but it is a slightly funny format because of the live nature. Don't always get everything said. So I'm very happy to answer any questions that you've got during, if I spot them. But again, the live format doesn't always let me do that. Or afterwards, if you leave any comments or questions and I don't get to them during the broadcast, then I will answer them. Anything that happens in the next day or two, any comments on there, I will answer your questions. So yes, anxiety is the, oh yes, I just want to say, just to so you know, of course I've got notes, I've got a lot of information I want to share. So I may not be the most polished and perfect, but I want you to get the information. That's the most important thing here. So yeah, it's the most heavily diagnosed mental health condition or behavior pattern. It has overtaken depression as being the most commonly diagnosed, and a lot of people see anxiety and depression as different sides of the same thing. We even hear people say depression's fear of the past, anxiety's fear of the future, living in the present is where it's at, and it's actually not really true. Anxiety isn't the opposite of depression. It is a separate situation, a separate thing that's being triggered, but they do often occur together in people, and I will talk about that a bit later on. Now, I'm going to, before we start talking about anxiety, I want to just introduce myself. I work to support people in creating balanced health and using that knowledge that they get from their understanding their health to actually create a thriving, happy, healthy life on their terms, where they don't necessarily have to live in line with their conditioning. They can actually live a life of their choice that they truly love. And people are on different stages of this journey. So for people who are really experiencing very, the difficult health conditions and feeling that they're trapped in some way, all they want to do generally is just get out of there. But whatever the health condition is, whether it's a physical health condition or a mental health condition, there is not just an opportunity to heal yourself from that. There's also within it the knowledge and understanding and some clues on how you can start to create an even better life for yourself, not just from getting better, but actually what you can move towards more in line with who you are, your personal values, your true objectives for life. So, yeah, if you're just joining now, hi, welcome. It's great to see you all here. And please do drop me a comment or just send some hearts flying up the screen or anything like that. All of those actions help to get this out to more people. So I really appreciate that, because this information is very useful for people who might be struggling with anxiety or other mental health conditions and haven't been able to do anything about it. So yeah, so within the as I said, within the whatever the condition is, there's the seeds of a better, more beautiful life in line with who you are and bringing more of yourself out into the world. Although I appreciate that but the first priority is just bringing yourself forwards, not back, but forwards to health equilibrium, so that you are ready to have that great platform to be able to move forwards in. Morning, Mel. Thanks for the comment. Yep. I'm just, and of course, as you've all just joined, just want to say any questions that you've got, drop them in the comments. Looks like I am seeing comments today, which is awesome. So I will attempt to answer them at the end. And if I don't, I'll get around to them in the afterwards. So META-Health, the philosophy of health that I use to explore conditions with people, is that the body is intelligent, and physical biological processes, whether they are in the body or in the brain, where they're generally in both, but they if they are mental health conditions or physical, they have a reason behind them. The body's intelligent. It's trying to adapt. It's trying to adapt to different types of traumas, limiting beliefs, and emotional blocks from your past, which are basically not serving you. Body's trying to resolve them through some form of physical solution, and that can have, obviously, can feel very unpleasant, uncomfortable in your life, but within it, as I said, there are opportunities for real growth in your life. So yeah, so what happens when you have certain types of emotional difficult events which are unexpected, dramatic, so they're a big deal to you, that may not be a big deal to everyone, but to you in that moment they were a big deal. Isolating, so you felt alone in that moment, or you had to deal with it yourself and you didn't have a strategy to deal with it at the time, is they get internalized. They hit you, the energy of it hits you in the heart, then it hits you in one of 4 brain relays, all of which relate to different types of traumatic event or life event, and then it hits either a body part, or if there's more than one, if it's a body part then, or a body tissue, then physical symptoms happen. If it's more than one type of trauma or simultaneous traumas at one time, or you get various different responses to trauma, then you can have 2 different brain tissues being hit at the same time, and that means that it becomes a behavior pattern known as a mental health condition. And these are called constellations. And anxiety, some of the various anxiety ones are, well, in fact, all of them are constellations in what's called the cerebral cortex, which is the higher brain. Depression also falls in that. So all of the depression conflicts, depression and mania conflicts that I talked about last week, also are in this sort of higher brain. It's generally about territorial conflicts, can be about separation type things, but in the case of these, they're generally about territorial invasion or something to do with being attacked or your territory in some way. And I'll go into the specific anxiety constellations a bit later on. However, before I do that, now anxiety is something that most people experience at some point in their life. It's actually a normal stress response, nervousness when going into a big new event. It's the body really putting you on alert, and it has some benefits when it only happens for a short amount of time. It can give you extra energy, can give you opportunities, but it can be debilitating. It is a normal stress result. It's a normal stress response, and stress is a good thing when it's a normal response. So people automatically, we talk about stress like it's a bad thing, but if you didn't have stress, you wouldn't get out of bed in the morning, because if you were constantly in this relaxed, regenerative state, then you don't have energy. So stress is just basically giving your body energy to actually do something. But we're out of balance in our modern lives, and people spend far too much time stressed and not nearly enough time in the sort of regeneration aspect of life. So this is a really key point, is that because we're spending so much time stressed and we're not releasing stress as we're not living naturally, so this comes back to the domestication thing that I talked about last week, we aren't able to release stress in the same way that we could in the wild. You know, for example, it's not most people can't just go out into the, or don't want to just go out into the street and give a mighty scream to let go of what's going on inside, for example. We do have ways that we can release, and I'm going to come on to that a bit later on, and they even fit in with our modern lives. But, you know, we're seeing so many people diagnosed with anxiety at the moment, and some of them actually do have the specific behavior patterns which fit in with the anxiety constellations that I'll talk about in a bit. So they really are truly with an anxiety condition, potentially. But there's also many people, I believe, and I'm not alone in this, this is something that we've been talking about in the META-Health community, that many people are just exhibiting and experiencing the signs of staying in stress for a long time. So they are literally just stressed. And so this is giving them obsessive thinking, because they're always thinking about the reason why they're stressed. Admittedly, they don't always know that, because it can be subconscious. But if obsessive thoughts going on, that generally indicates stress. The high energy and nervousness can be that sort of fight or flight energy of getting things done. So it can feel a lot like anxiety. But yeah, I'd just like to just put it out there that perhaps it is stress. It's not a specific anxiety condition. For some people, it's stress, and this means that actually the first thing that I would recommend to anyone who's experiencing anxiety is that they just see if it's about that they're really stressed, and then they can, or if they can find a way of releasing themselves from the stress, so working out what they're stressed about, using tapping, EFT, brilliant techniques for just releasing you from stress and being able to, go about your day. So really exploring if there's anything stressful, and that can be very simple. Finding a way to be relaxed. So, for some people that might be meditation, could be things like going for a walk in nature, grounding, either literally grounding by putting your feet in the mud or on the dirt, or using a grounding process. There's a really good one where it's the 5-4-3-2-1 process, and it's something like count 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can smell, 2 things you can touch, and 1 thing you can feel. And as you do that while you're breathing exercises, all things, these are all things that can just, if it might just be stress. I'll say just, because stress can feel very powerful for people, of course, but it might be that you're experiencing ongoing stress, and through finding a way to resolve that stress, then what seem to be anxiety symptoms can just disappear. But there are specific anxiety patterns, which I'm going to go through in a minute, and those can be more complex. Now, still, actually I always find anxiety is fairly easy to make real shifts in very quickly with tapping techniques, and doing other things in your life, exploring other aspects of life. It's one of the things, tapping is brilliant for many things, but it's one of the things where you can most quickly notice rapid resolutions, basically. So yeah, different types of anxiety that I'm going to come on to. They have a positive purpose. Now, it can feel really awful, of course, because it could be keeping you from actually doing things with your life, feeling a sort of paralyzing fear, just finding it very difficult to make any decisions because your mind's clouded with fear of the future. But, in sort of caveman times, there were real reasons that people would be experiencing anxiety, and it could be basically the anxiety, whatever it is trying. The purpose behind it, the positive purpose, is that it's trying to stop you from experiencing situations like situations that you felt before, probably in your very early life, which might have been tiny little things, but they meant a big deal to you as a small child. They were shocking to you as a small child. This can even be things like a shocking look, an angry look from your mother when you only normally experience her with kindness, and she didn't even mean it, but she was just thinking about something at the time, and then she turned, maybe you had been trying her patience a bit that day, and she turned around, shot you an angry look. So that's a shock to a small child, especially if they then feel helplessness around it. But then it can also be bigger things, and as our life goes, these things don't always happen in the first few years of life. You can be predisposed to them. You can even be born disposed to anxiety, nervousness, etc., because we carry epigenetic patterns from our parents, from our ancestry. So this can all come through while you're in the womb. If your mum is very anxious or was very anxious, you could be picking up the emotional responses, so you could be feeling anxiety and becoming predisposed to it before even being born, and without any context. While she might understand, your mum might have understood why she was feeling the anxiety, so it would be more manageable for her. For the little baby inside, it's just these feelings of anxiety, so born predisposed, as an example. But the positive purpose, it's designed to stop you experiencing situations where you feel helpless, powerless, in danger. So some of the anxiety constellations get you out of danger quickly. That there might be attackers hiding behind a tree or behind a rock in caveman time, but it could, in modern times, could be someone's going to ambush me. Literally, it could be to do with an attacker. People, of course, while we do live in much safer times than ever before, people do still, sadly, get attacked, and there are dangerous situations that people find themselves in. And anxiety can be a response to that. A massive one can be fear that there's a horrible or dangerous future coming up. So these are all things that the anxiety is trying to protect you from. Unfortunately, in our modern life, because we're not releasing these stresses, we can find that it becomes self-perpetuating and we start seeing these horrible situations everywhere, even when they don't exist. So it becomes more and more debilitating. So yeah, but really the domestication is keeping people stuck in these ways. Now, any questions you've got, drop them in, because I'm aware that I'm saying a lot of stuff. It'd be great to have some great to see if there's anyone wants to know anything in particular. I've already got some questions that someone sent me over, so I will answer them at the end. But now I'm going to go on to 3 different types of anxiety that you can experience. And some people have just one of these. Some people feel anxious, but they don't have any of them. It's a stress response, like I said. But these are the 3 recognized ones, the 3 main ones recognized in META-Health. So they're called constellations, and each one of us got 2 specific things that has led to them. The first one is the classic anxiety constellation, so it's like a general anxiety where you just feel anxiety, a level, which could be a low level or a very high level of anxiety, could fluctuate at all times in life. And this comes about when you've had experiences which are, the first one is a fear of frontal attack, and that can either be literally, such as a punch in the face, or it could be more of a fear of something coming from the future, and coupled with that, a sense of powerlessness. So this could be one where for example, if at school someone was regularly bullied by the same bully every day, they always came straight towards them, and they even dreaded that this bully was going to come and see them. So always thinking about it, a sense of something coming from the future that they kind of knew was going to happen day by day, and then along with a sense of helplessness towards it. So that's one example of how a general anxiety constellation could be started, and then your brain, of course, your reticular activating system, filtering sensory information of what's going on around you in the world, could find that it seems like you're attracting those situations, but actually it's because you're on the lookout for them to try and stop them again. So you end up with a fearfulness of the future, constantly fearful of what's ahead, what you're going to be able to do to resolve it. And most people, if they've got this at a high level, they aren't thinking clearly because their mind is clouded by fear, and all of their judgments are made from not all, but many of their judgments are made from a place of fear. So that is the anxiety constellation. Then the next one is very similar, but it's the boxed in constellations, or the cornered constellation, and this is the one that can often lead to panic attacks. And you can have both of this one running alongside the first one, of course. And this is where people have found themselves in situations where they felt like there was no way out. They can be unpredictable. You don't know how people like this are necessarily going to respond. The plan or the strategy that this subconscious pattern of boxed in or cornered is trying to create with the panic attacks is all energy focused on one outcome, which is probably something along the lines of "get me out of here" type of response. Again, this doesn't just relate to attack from the front. This is someone who's got fear of attack from the front and the back, so always looking around, and either literally or figuratively. It can also go with the powerlessness, but it's always it can be powerlessness and rear attack, or it can be frontal attack and rear attack triggers that have actually led to it. There's 2 different versions of it. The essential feeling of the constellation is basically the same. It's this cornered, boxed in, trapped kind of anxiety. So slightly different to the fear of the future one. It's like more of but you're trapped and boxed in, and you have to just get out of that situation, which is when the classic short panic attacks can actually kick in. And then the third version, and again, you can run 1 or 2 or all 3 of these, is paranoia and paranoia or persecution. And this is the idea that there's so in the I guess the Neanderthal version of this is that there would be there's an assailant, saber-toothed tiger or rival tribe person hiding round every corner out to get you. There's so in the darkness, every twig is every twig that you hear snapping, every noise is something big out there in the forest that's dangerous. In our modern lives, it can also be people with these fears of they've been caught out for something before, and then they live in constant fear that they're going to be caught out as an imposter in what they're doing. So it can translate into people's work lives that they feel like they're always on a knife edge of being found out and being basically not being what they say they are. So I'm going to get caught. I'm going to get caught out. They're out to get me. Imagine this fits in well with the with paranoid aspect of conspiracy theory, I suppose. Or but there's always going to be someone who's out to get you. And so it can make things feel very, very real that there's a real there's a state of victimhood, and that there are there's people that are out there trying to get you, basically. Now I just want to give you an example of how anxiety and depression could run together here. So if you had this persecution, paranoia conflict, and it went alongside the sexual depression conflict that I talked about last week, which should be, let's say you'd had a bad experience with a stalker in your early teens or whatever, and this then became a quite justified really fear of that you're going to be stalked and persecuted. Then this could lead to both the anxiety paranoia conflict going on alongside the depressive sort of sexual depression conflict. So you could be running, that's a way that you could have two different things triggered by the same event. So generally, if people are running depression and anxiety, by the way, it is best to explore the depression aspect first of all. Not always, it can be that the anxiety comes up, but it's good to really explore the depression aspect and then move on to the anxiety side. They can, but in some cases they can be resolved all in the same, within the same memories, because they are, they can be very related, even though they're different behavior patterns that have been triggered. Okay, so I'm just going to give you some examples. So if you're wondering what a conflict might be, I talked already about the bullying one, but another example, something that I experienced in my own life, which led to real anxiety for me as a child for a while, was the news. And there was when I was growing up, many of you I'm sure will relate to this. There was a lot of fear around about nuclear war. It was, there was the Soviet US war situation going on, and there was always talk on the news about nuclear stuff. So that, just think about what that leads to. That leads to a sense of powerlessness, that you can't do anything about that, and a fear of the future. So within a news story picked up by an impressionable child, that can be, that's actually, that's a conflict right there, leading to this general anxiety situation, fear that there might be this horrific event, which I didn't even know what it meant, but it sounded terrible. And then when the Falklands conflict happened, I really went into overdrive with that, because I I didn't know the difference between that and what the Soviet and US conflict would be. And I thought, well, this, you know, that could lead to one of these events. So I was on super high alert specifically for those kind of things happening. So, you know, that's an example of a frontal fear, anxiety going on, a fear of the future based anxiety. Some other examples. So helplessness. You know, this, you know, let's say someone is an event organizer and they end up with at Christmas and New Year, they've got tons of events, far too many for them to deal with, and they just get this feeling that they're helpless at being able to actually organize everything. So this, you know, this not a dangerous, life-threatening event by any means, but this nonetheless has led them to feeling helplessness in their life. And when combined with the fear of seeing, you know, all the events approach and have I got everything sorted here, then you've got the frontal fear element as well. So that could lead to this high anxiety sort of feeling going on. You know, frontal fear could come, you know, dreading a, let's say, you know, starting to feel anxious in a anxiety in a relationship, because, you know, if you aren't happy but you're terrified of actually the reaction that you'll get from your partner when you want to talk to them about something, that can lead to an ongoing anxiety. So it doesn't have to be massive dangerous things that happen. It can be quite small things. Not, you know, afraid that you're going to be overloaded with work. So, you know, we can see that these things that can just be stressful things can tip over into these anxiety patterns, that you're going to have too much work, you're not going to be able to get it done, could lead to the paranoia persecution complex, feeling that you're going to get caught out by the boss. But they say that you lied about your skills at the interview and that this is all too much for you, those kinds of things. So modern life, the trials and tribulations of modern life give us new dangers that we didn't have although maybe we had you said you were a good mammoth hunter, and then when it actually comes at you, you froze as it charged you with its tusks, and then you got laughed at by the tribe around the campfire. But there's still a real danger there, you know. But we see things in our lives that are perceptions of real danger when they're not really real danger. Now, one that is a real danger, of course, or is perceived as a real danger by people, is a serious, or what's told is a serious diagnosis. So a serious health diagnosis, which can come as a massive shock, and a bad, or what's perceived as a bad diagnosis, is always one of these unexpected, dramatic, isolating, no strategy to deal with events for most people, especially if they're not expecting it. So let's say a cancer diagnosis or something like that, and they've not really, you know, they've always felt they were healthy, so they've not looked into an understanding of what that might be and what their actual potential to resolve that is. So they could be, they could get this frontal fear, like this fear of the future coming towards them, this helplessness, like they're powerless over it, whereas in fact they might have a lot of power, and they might have lots of things that they can do about the diagnosis. But that moment of shock is always one of these UDINs, unexpected, dramatic, isolating, no strategy. So we always look at any medical interventions or diagnosis, especially diagnosis, can be very strong events for people. And there's almost, you know, you can have this situation where the diagnosis itself is can be even worse. The shock of the diagnosis can be more dangerous than what the diagnosis actually is. Okay, so so those are the three types. There's some examples now. So many different other things that can happen and can lead to these, and that's where, you know, things like META-Health and EFT, matrix reimprinting, tapping, etc., can be really useful for finding these root cause events and you know, and actually releasing the emotional attachment to them. I'll come on to some questions in a bit, but I just want to talk about some of the solutions or the solutions that you can have, which don't just lead to you healing from the pattern. They also lead to, yeah, ideally to a better, more beautiful life as well. Super important, I think, and the first thing that anyone who's experiencing anxiety or stress-based anxiety-like symptoms is to have a mechanism by which they can release themselves from the symptoms. And you know, there's brilliant ones of them out there. There's things, physical ones. Of course, there's medication, and that works very well for people. And it can be important to have the medication for some people while they are looking to find the root and release the root causes. Are we looking at an integrated approach? It's not about complementary versus mainstream medicine. There's bests of both, which can be applied and be really useful. Now, yeah, the antipsychotic medicines, etc., don't work for everybody. They can have unexpected effects, but for some people they are very good. So, you know, don't discount it. But you know, there's also more natural things such as CBD oil is very useful for a lot of people with anxiety. Constellations, they're able to take the edge off with that non-psychotropic medicine, basically based on cannabis, but it doesn't get you high. So that, yeah, things like that. But you don't even need necessarily those things. You can use tapping on the symptoms that are coming up. You can use that grounding process, the 5, 4, 3, 2, 1 that I talked about earlier. Breathing, well, 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can smell, 2 things you can touch, 1 thing you can feel. So focusing your attention on that while you breathe, just, yeah, some mindfulness style breathing, all great ways. I like tapping. I find it's super useful for people to release themselves from anxiety symptoms, to the point where I've had some clients where just having a tapping session, they realized it's enough for them because it's getting them out of the debilitating panic attacks. Maybe they weren't ready to go and face all of their shadow side stuff, but just having a process that they can use so that it's not bothering them as much in their life was enough for them at that time. And that's completely fine. You know, whatever the individual needs is what they need at that time. It's not down to us to tell them what they need. They can, yeah, if just having a process, a simple control process is what they need, then great. Then the next stage for people who do want to explore and resolve the root cause is to release the emotional effects, the belief systems, and the behavior patterns which have resulted from these core unexpected shocking events, and also the types of events that have triggered them. So actually using a process such as matrix reimprinting, movie technique in EFT, timeline therapy in NLP or other NLP processes. These are all things, hypnosis. These are all great ways to go back and actually resolve the original root cause events. EFT, tapping style techniques, and matrix, of course, my favorites. I really like the way tapping brings a physicality in, so it's not all just a cerebral process. You're really getting not only I know the other ones you can feel the emotions as well, but you're feeling the emotions and you've got a physical sort of release process, so that you could go back and basically support the younger self to resolve the beliefs and behaviors that they set up due to, and of course the emotional responses that they set up from these initial events, which are now echoed throughout their lives. So that can be massively changing, and really key to do that. Not everyone not everyone recovers or moves forward just by releasing root cause events. This is something I think is really key. I think that so many practitioners and people out there just think resolve the root causes and the situation will go, but that's not the case at all. Well, it can be for some people, but there's often more to it. Now, old habits die hard, and if you think that your body has set up a system for the last 25, 50 years of feeling anxious, that's a very strong habit. And just by releasing the root causes doesn't mean that you're going to be able to actually release the habit. So so you need to actually do things in the now, and also explore things in the future. And this is where resourcefulness is very key. Building self-confidence. So if it's powerlessness and fear of the future, starting to build habits of enthusiasm and optimism about the future, and looking at ways that the future could be good, along with building the self-confidence and reminding that individual just how resourceful they've been in being able to actually how well they've done in surviving in their life, but now it's time to thrive. So the old habit was a solution to a problem, but maybe the problem isn't really as it was anymore, and now they can start to create new outcomes in their life. So this could be things like future pacing type techniques, so future visualization, bringing in a positive future, and just building resourcefulness in the now, resilience, and there's very simple tapping techniques you can do for this. So just tapping as and when things come up in life can be very strong. Using non-specific tapping, which just enables you to feel more grounded. Doing meditation, those kinds of things can be very useful. Reframing symptoms. So I think this is really key. Is it's not necessarily that well known that most people experience fear and excitement very similarly. So they might have exactly the same physical sensations in their body, but depending on their past experiences, they either experience them as fear or excitement. So starting to explore that, and once you've released the past stuff, being able to start looking at the symptoms on their self, and not automatically connecting them to fear, but maybe they are excitement instead. And then it can start being, oh, what have I got to be excited about? Oh yeah, actually I can look forward to this presentation, doing this presentation. It's going to be fun, rather than, oh, this is going to be dreadful. I really just need to get this, or I don't even want to do this, in fact. And and there can be for some people there might require some real life solutions. So there might be something they're missing from their life that can actually practically help them. So one example might, I guess, martial arts training, something like that. So people who are fearful of attack, as well as doing the releasing work, they might want to learn some self-defense stuff so that they do feel stronger in the world for themselves. If they're in a bullying environment at work, which is triggering them from past experience of being bullied, being able to either, if they can get to a stage where they can just shrug it off, then great, or they might have to accept that they have to address the bullying in some way, whether that's through a tribunal or a union or something like that, or just get out of that situation and realize that that is not their place. So those are things that they could do. Someone Justine has just said that there's a where are my feet exercise. So I actually haven't come across that one, but I can imagine it's just like connecting down, another grounding thing. So really there's some practical life changes, and all of it, there's so many things that you can do. It's about understanding that you have choice and can be safe in the world. So whether it's physical, actual lifestyle changes, whether it is releasing the emotional attachments and the belief systems, etc., creating new habits, creating new behaviors. These are all, all great things to do. Perhaps physical solutions. There might be herbal things, rescue remedy, CBD oil, those kinds of things. A full integrated approach, medicine if needed, is a great way forwards with this. Okay, so I'm going to come on to some questions in a bit. Just want to let you know that anxiety, if anxiety is something that you're struggling with, or you know someone who is, then I'd love to offer a META-Health Consultation. I normally charge £300 for these. For a while, I've been doing them for £100, and I'm continuing that offer. Is going to end soon because I'm getting very busy, but I'm definitely going to keep it going for this mental health series for anyone who wants to explore those aspects. So £100 for a meta consultation to find the root causes, the belief patterns, the belief systems, behavior patterns, and specific emotional events that have led to a physical or mental or combination of symptoms in your body, and what you can do to actually resolve them. So drop me a message if you or anyone you know wants to take advantage of that offer. So now after that, I will just have a look at questions. So first question I had was how to interrupt the cycle of association and the experience of anxiety. And and this is this was relating specifically to teenagers. For me, I think learning tapping is a great first step. Having tapping as a process that you can use just in the moment. First of all, again, there might be some perhaps fears about being seen to be weird doing some tapping when something comes up, but knowing that they've got a tapping process to use later on might be something that's really useful. There's stealth tapping, where you just tap your fingers rather than all the body points. This can be used in most situations without necessarily being seen. So that's one thing. First of all, the cycle of association. Well, that is, those are the past events, I guess, which has led to this. And when you noticing what it is that actually triggers you, so when something happens that causes the anxiety reaction to occur, using that, then you can use tapping to find the root cause events which have caused that same feeling. And how you do that is a process called chasing the energy, where you attach to the feeling that comes up when the trigger actually happens, and then use that to find previous times when you also felt that precise feeling or something that felt like that. And they come up really quickly subconsciously when you ask those questions, which then leads you to be able to release the emotional attachment to those past events. And matrix re-imprinting is probably the best technique that I know for this. Timeline therapy also very effective. But yeah, I mean, certainly teenagers are able to engage. But young children, matrix re-imprinting, it can be too much for them as they're very much in the present moment. But teenagers can absolutely engage with these processes and be able to explore their past events. And they don't have 50 years of past events built up like many of us have, so they don't have to sift through all of that. They're going to probably get some resolution quite quickly to that. And grounding techniques. So really finding out, I guess if you're going to look at the type of anxiety it is it the fear of the future? Is it the boxed in, cornered type? Is it persecution and paranoia? Now, if it's related to bullying, it could absolutely be all three of those, and might need to explore all of them. Okay, so the question is, relating to anxiety due to a stomach problem. So, yeah, perhaps if that's fear of, if that's fear of, I don't know, diarrhea or vomiting or having or something like that, or getting stomach or fear that this is going to come, then well, there's first of all making peace with that, but I think it's actually going to be important to explore and understand the root cause behind whatever that stomach problem is. And if it, some digestive problems are to do with, they can be to do with grudges, holding on to a grudge. They can be due to not being able to digest some information. Look at the metaphor. Is there something undigestible in life that they need to assimilate and be able to process so that they don't have to have this pattern anymore? But yeah, again, it's all about, of course, there's the resolving the past stuff. There's having a current moment ability to actually resolve the situation or release the worst effects of the anxiety stress response in that time. And then there's creating the resilience in the future. What's building self-esteem, massive for teenagers. Let's face it, this is a time where they are getting these real their self-esteem is often made or broken for a lot of kids at this time, because there's their rites of passage timers of year where we don't really have rites of passage in life these days like we used to have in olden days, prehistoric days even, or some tribal societies still have. So the kids are doing them themselves. There's a lot of confusion around that. A lot of, it can be, a lot of backstabbing happens. So think of that in terms of or perceived backstabbing, looking for the place in the group. So many different things happening, teenagers. So exploring these very real things that they've got going on, but also really building a sense of self-esteem, resilience, and excitement and optimism about the future. It's going to be different for every young adult, every teenager, of course, what they need to do to get to that. I guess it's about understanding them. Now, it's really important that there's no off-the-shelf solution for this stuff. Everyone's experience, the things that people find shocking, the things that cause these health conditions are different for each individual. One person bullying might cause it, so for someone else, it might just slide off them. They might be already resilient to that, and they might get their shocks might come through something completely different. It might be, in this case, it was about a stomach problem. So, they're feeling that perhaps they're feeling helpless because they feel like they can't do anything about this stomach problem. And then they've got a fear of it striking and they never know where. But actually, these are all things, they are beliefs. They're certainly very real, but the physical symptoms are happening at the time, and there is resolution possible for them. So it's enabling them to find that, along with creating the self-confidence and optimism and excitement about the future. These are some of the ways. Could be other things that are needed, of course. So I'm seeing the comments. Has anyone got any other questions that they'd like me to answer? While I'm waiting, I just want to remind you that, if you or anyone else is struggling with anxiety, depression, most other mental health patterns or physical symptoms, then I would love to support you with a META-Health consultation. They are £100 at the moment. My normal price is £300. That price is continuing throughout this series, but I'm probably going to increase it because I'm getting a lot of these coming through, and it's been great to do loads of them. But now, I am getting very busy, so I might have to limit them at that price. That's what I'm saying. That's the long-winded way. So last call for any questions. Okay, right. Well, I guess that's it. Thank you very much for joining. I hope that. Oh, has someone put one in? Oh, someone said that there's a question. I can't actually see uh, another question on here. Okay, all right, yes. So someone said, what about after having a baby? Can anxiety be heightened by hormones? Right, yeah, that's a really good question. Now, a lot of things happen after having a baby because the birth process is so the hormones are more of a body response rather than they're not a root cause in themselves. A lot of things happen. I think there's so many things that happen with a baby. The birth, birth can be very stressful. People might have a preconceived plan of exactly how they wanted the birth to go, and then they might have felt, if you're talking about powerlessness and fear, if let's say someone wanted a natural home birth and then they didn't get that, they ended up being rushed to hospital and having to have a cesarean for whatever reason, then we're right in there. There's a powerlessness and frontal fear conflict there, so that could certainly trigger anxiety. There could be fear as the time comes towards the baby arriving. It could be, wow, my life is really going to change and I'm not ready for this. So again, there's powerlessness and frontal fear there. And there's nothing in here about not loving the baby or not being a good mum or whatever, or good dad. But these can all lead to, there's still things that can lead to anxiety. Could be, I have to keep this baby safe at all times. Everything's a possible danger to my baby. So yeah, they're so frail, and I have to look after them, and and that can continue. And I guess we all, as parents, I guess we all have a certain feeling of that we need to look after our children, of course. But what if it becomes too much and smothering them in cotton wool? Then that could be a sign of anxiety. But yeah, so many things around birth, and there's loads of really good processes specifically around birth. The birth matrix, birth re-imprinting protocols, which can this is a really important point, because if something around the birth subconsciously triggered stuff that is stored within your body and your mind, but you aren't accessing consciously from when you were born and what happened then that can put you into a constellation or bring some physical symptoms about. So yeah, you can. There's a lot of it's becoming increasingly seen that people will go into a form of post-traumatic stress. This isn't everyone, of course, but some people go into post-traumatic stress after a birth because it's a big event, and things, if it doesn't go as planned, it can be very shocking. It can feel very shocking, and the repercussions can go on for a long time. And in those cases, if you're experiencing these sort of anxiety things going on or whatever, many women and men as well go into a form of depression, or they can experience depression. It's known as postnatal depression. Absolutely affects men as well as women. And so there's a lot to explore around birth. And so your own birth, births that you've given or been part of. So dad watching a traumatic birth and dad's feeling powerlessness because they can't do anything to help their partner when they're going through all this pain. The classic male response is to be the fixer, but the role's very much reverse in a birth, where the woman is really doing all the work and the man is the space holder at best there. He might go fetch some towels or water, or be there, helping with some hypnobirthing exercises or whatever they're doing. But really, this is the mum is, of course, the main participant here, and men can often feel helpless and out of their depth, so it could flip them into anxiety as well. So loads of times that that anxiety, there's loads of reasons that anxiety can come up about your children, absolutely, whether that's before, during, or after the birth. And there's loads of brilliant solutions to be able to clear and release yourself from that. Of course, it's natural to be concerned about your child's safety and make sure that they are living safely and not getting into dangerous situations. None of these make you foolhardy, dangle your kid out of the window type of thing, but it's about releasing excessive fear, excessive responses, so that you can actually make peace with the past and then transform your future. So yes, that's my answer to that. Bit long-winded. I've really enjoyed today, as I know there's been a lot of information in there. If anyone wants to contact me privately about any of this or ask any questions in the comments, it seemed like I was picking some of them up, but not all of them for some reason. So I'm sure they'll come through in good time. So thank you very much for your attention. Have a beautiful Sunday. If it's the start of a Sunday like it is here, have a great day. I hope you had a great day. And toodle pip, that's Sam, EFT Now. Lots of love. Over and out.